Welcome to the Gonzo Chronicles. I'm your host, Cyrus Alderwood, the official spokesman for Generation X. Stick around. It's going to get weird, as always. Yeah, welcome back. Today's March 11th, 2022. It's been a few days since I've recorded, and I really hate that. I wanted to do a show before now, a couple in between now and the last one. Life sort of got in the way. I'm sure everyone knows how that goes. Uh, I don't really talk a whole lot about too many personal things, but um, it's been a couple of weeks, man. Um, Had another scare. Like for those who don't know, my mother, she's a widow, and she has a lot of health issues. So we thought we may have had another scare with lung cancer. She's already went through it twice. Thankfully, caught early. A scan didn't show the results they were looking for, so she had to go in for like a more in-depth scan, a PET scan, and which is more in-depth, closer look, and they give you some sort of thing. If it lights up on the scan, then it's a cancerous thing, and at that point they do a biopsy. A little scared, but thankfully no cancer, cancer free. And with the myriad of other health issues, man, we needed that. It's great, great news. And also, yeah, my car, yeah, the engine light came on. I know what you're thinking. Oh, that sucks. That's expensive. Well, it could have been one of a couple of problems, but I picked it up today after dropping it off on Wednesday, and it was the lesser of the two problems, so it was easily fixed. Something that could have cost me several $100s ended up only costing me about 115. And you know what? A lot of people say that sucks, and yeah, it probably does. But I'm going to give it some better energy. I got two great pieces of news this week. I mean, it could have been worse. Tells you, man, there's a silver lining in everything if you want to find it. So I recommend you go find it. Been a good week, busy week, but I'm back, and I'll be doing tomorrow. I'll be on the Caffeinated Cooper show, so go look Elizabeth Cooper up on Facebook, or go to YouTube and look up Caffeinated Cooper show. Make sure you hit subscribe. She is awesome. She gives me a platform to talk about some of the books that I've written. So she has me as a guest on her show. Sometimes we'll talk about unsolved mysteries, some weird stuff, whether it be unsolved murders, unsolved crazy mysteries, uh, my books, maybe sometimes occasionally we've mentioned the foundation that I run, but also tomorrow I'm actually I give what's called the business report every Saturday or every other. So I'm glad she's back. I get to do the business report and go over what's gone on over the last couple of weeks in the stock market. For those of you that don't know my day job, I'm an investment advisor, and I think I've mentioned that before on a show. And I had some wise ass on Twitter saying, "What are you, an economist?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, sort of. I have a degree in it." So um, anyway, so I'll be on that tomorrow around 1 o'clock. So go check that out. We're going to talk a little bit about where the market's been, possibly where it's going. I know it's a choppy time in the market. Inflation is just rearing its ugly head. We're looking at close to 10% now. The Federal Reserve is going to be raising rates, but with a slowing economy, are we raising rates and going into a recession? That's a question. We have to consider that with so much going on in the world. Oil prices going way up, and everybody's paying way too much at the pump. Um, So we'll talk about that tomorrow. However, tonight we're going to talk Gen X stuff. This is all about Gen X stuff. So, one of the shows I've been wanting to do for a while is talk about just some of the cool shows that we watched as Gen Xers and back in the 80s and maybe late 70s, early 90s, or actually through the 90s. I mean, we Gen Xers love our freaking TV, man, and we love sitcoms. So I went to this website or this Facebook page, and I'm going to give this page a shout out because this is a very fun page. And I hope if you're listening, if you're not already a member, just click on join. It's Generation X Nostalgia. And as your official spokesman for Generation X, I posed a question on here the other day. So I said, and this is on March 8th, the middle of the afternoon. So I said, my fellow Gen Xers, favorite sitcoms from our era? You never know what kind of comments you're going to get back. You might get some, you might get none. The one thing I love about this particular page, actually I have an 80s page myself, it doesn't have a lot of interaction on it. However, actually none of my Facebook pages have a lot of interaction on it. But this one, I got 461 comments. That was great. It was freaking great. So a lot of people chimed in and started talking about it. And I'm not going to mention anybody's names because I didn't get permission to give anybody like a shout out or anything on here. But I got a lot of answers back. And some of them mentioned things that weren't sitcoms. So I was going to give you a top 10 list, but it's so hard to give a top 10. So I'm going to do what I'm going to do is I'm going to go just mention some of these shows. And I'm going to give you a top 10 on the Gonzo Chronicles page and on my Facebook page. So just look me up on Facebook, Cyrus Alderwood, and then just leave comments. What are your top 10 Gen X sitcoms? But some people chimed in with things that weren't really sitcoms. I didn't really look at too many of those. But as I look at some of these are some amazing shows. So the last one that I just pulled up here, this lady says, I love Northern Exposure. Was in high school when it came out. Have loved no show more. And this guy comes in, yeah, I loved it too. They don't seem to show that on any other channel, do they? I could be wrong. I wonder if it's on Hulu. Because Dr. Fleischman, anybody remember that guy? And what was the really cute girl's name on there? She was sexy. I can't remember her name. Black hair, big brown eyes. Holy cow. Like the kind of girl you'd fall for when she smiled at you. However, Northern Exposure was a great show. It really was. If you haven't seen it, give it a shot. Go try to find it somewhere. I know you probably are not going to go buy it on Amazon unless you're just a big fan, but don't buy it if you haven't seen it. But try to find it somewhere and watch some shows and see what you think. Some other people chimed in here with like The Incredible Hulk and Dukes of Hazzard. Oh, those aren't sitcoms either. Fall Guy, that was a great show. Airwolf, of course. You gotta mention Knight Rider and A-Team. One of my favorite like cop shows, dramatic shows, other than Miami Vice, because that's like on the Mount Rushmore of cool cop shows ever. But I like this show called Riptide. That was really, really good. I always look forward to Riptide. It came on right after the A-Team. I think it might have been like Tuesday nights or something, but I love that show, Riptide. So even if half the people forgot to change the channel, Riptide was a hit. It was great. But there was like people mentioned like Dallas. There were so many mentions of Knight Rider. It's ridiculous how many Knight Riders comments. Love Boat. That was an hour-long show. Would you consider it a sitcom? I don't know. Doubt it. But there were some great sitcoms. So let's go over some of these. Now, I was kind of on the fence with this one. Like, not because it's not a great sitcom. It is an amazing sitcom. But it came in at the late 70s, like a very early stage of Gen X. MASH. So, I guess I'll toss MASH in there because a lot of people mention MASH. Tons of people mention MASH. I was actually surprised at some of these shows that were mentioned. I forgot a lot of these. I generally do a little search and like just to remind myself, hey, 80 sitcoms or whatever. And so a lot of these didn't pop up on some of these lists. But if you want some Gen X detail, go to this page and just ask a question. You'll get a bunch of answers. So I'm going to go over some of these shows that were mentioned that I consider sitcoms. But if you get an opportunity, just go look through that thread. I posted it up on March 8th, so you'll find a lot there. So the first thing at the top of the list, this got a lot of mentions. Seinfeld, obviously. Seinfeld, one of the top sitcoms of all time. I know millennials don't get it. Don't really give a rat's ass what millennials get or not. But Seinfeld, great show. Here's one that I actually forgot, and I don't know how I forgot this show. I lived in Cincinnati for a lot of years. WKRP in Cincinnati. That was freaking great. And the Thanksgiving episode, God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly. I mean, you can't find a better line in a sitcom than that. I mean, that was freaking hilarious. All right, I'm going to do a quick pause because I'm going to grab a fresh drink. I'll be right back. See, I just paused it. There's no delay whatsoever. However, how about that? I'll give you 3 guesses what that is. You only need one. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I totally forgot about that show. Will Smith has been in everything. But that was a fun show to watch when I was a kid. Now, this actually has to make my top 10 list. Excuse me. On the last episode, I talked about the Rolling Stone did another list of top sitcoms. And they screwed it up, right? Because at like number 98 was Night Court. I'm like, 98? How about number 8? Like, let's move Night Court up there. Night Court has to be in the top. The Simpsons. What a great show. And I think I maybe mentioned this before, but The Simpsons actually came about because, you remember the Tracy Ullman show? She was awesome. Tracy Ullman was awesome. But she had a show back in the 80s, and one of the segments of her show was The Simpsons. It was this little cartoon segment. Well, I guess everybody was writing in about The Simpsons really liked that. Fox grabbed a hold of it, spun that sucker off, and next thing you know, we're still watching The Simpsons. It's 2022, folks. That is awesome. Married with Children. That's a total Gen X show, if there ever was one. Politically incorrect, funny, and let's not forget Al Bundy scored 4 touchdowns in one game for Polk High. He might be the GOAT. He might be. Cosby Show, that's easily a top 10. I mean, if we forget what Bill Cosby did. Family Ties, that easily a top 10 show for Gen X. But here's some other ones I forgot. Now, actually, Cosby Show had a spinoff called not Different Strokes. I'll get to it in a minute. It's on my list. I'll find it down here somewhere. It's one where they went to college. A Different World. That's it. But Silver Spoons was a really good show. And that had, who was that little blonde-haired guy? Every girl had a poster of this guy or a magazine with him on the cover back in the 80s. Ricky something. I'm sure anybody from that Gen X page that's listening to this will be glad to correct me. Here's another one that popped up. Different Strokes. Awesome show. I watched that a lot. Benson. Wasn't really into Benson or Mr. Belvedere, but Mr. Belvedere was mentioned a good amount. Here's one that I completely forgot because my sisters watched this, but this got, I don't know how many mentions. So if I had to assume this made a top 10 for Gen X, just because of the number of mentions on this thread, The Facts of Life. My sisters loved that show. And occasionally I watched it because I was a young boy coming of age, and I thought that Blair chick, a little bitchy, but hot, and who didn't love Tootie, right? So The Facts of Life was a really good one. 227. That's one I actually watched too. I really liked 227 back when I was a kid. Good Times. I remember watching that. That was on, I think it was on the TBS channel. I don't know. I don't remember what years that came out. Probably, obviously in the 70s. Um, because Janet Jackson was a little tyke. She was actually on that show a few times. Um, the Jeffersons. I freaking love the Jeffersons. I watched that a lot as a kid. Barney Miller got quite a few mentions, but I never really watched Barney Miller. Here's another one that got a lot of mentions, and this was probably a little bit. I was probably a little too young for this one, but One Day at a Time. I keep getting messages. Sweet. All right, here's one of the biggest mentions, and I totally forgot about this because I didn't really think of it as a Gen X show. Golden Girls. That came out in the 80s, and that had a hell of a long run. And to this day, who still doesn't love Betty White or miss her at this point, right? Um, that actually, that probably from the number of mentions, I would have to probably put that one in the top three. I didn't go back and count, but if I had to assume, uh, just from the number of mentions on that page, on that thread, that was a big one. Here's one that I watched when I was a kid. Remember Alice? Yeah, the nice little lady that was got her car broken down. Her and her son lived in Phoenix because of that, and they worked at a Mel's Diner. Kiss my grits. Who's the boss? Like, even back then, I thought Alyssa Milano was cute. And she's still hot, but just a bitch. Um, Give me a break. That was a good show. Actually, I remember watching that. Remember Nell? I think Nell was her name. She was the like the nanny of the house. Nell Carter. And was it who's that kid on Blossom that played Joey? What was his name? Something Lawrence. Anyway, that kid. Yeah, that kid. He was tiny on that show. Um, but give me a break. That was a pretty big show for a couple 3 years. But I remember watching that. Now, my all-time favorite. This got mentioned so much. Obviously, it was a top three, just from the number of mentions. But Cheers. That is my all-time top sitcom of like any era. I own every season. I will proudly admit it. I own all of them on DVD. Martin. So we're getting into the 90s a little bit, but Martin and in Living Color, those are both big, big shows. Let me flip the page over. Let's go back into the. I don't remember if this was the 90s. It was Joey Lawrence was that kid's name. Anyway, Blossom, Mayim Bialik. So you all know her now from Big Bang Theory and one of the co-hosts of Jeopardy. I think she does an awesome job on Jeopardy. Either her or Ken Jennings. I would be happy if either one of them was just the host. And yeah, I love Jeopardy. I'm such a nerd. I like Jeopardy. But if you're a Jeopardy fan and you got pissed off when she just mentioned now we're going to play single Jeopardy, and then all these people start bitching and moaning on Twitter and social media, it's not single Jeopardy, it's Jeopardy. It's like, dude, it's a great trivia show. Just chill out. She's doing awesome as a host. So Blossom, good show. Blossom, if you're going to mention Blossom, you cannot go without mentioning Punky Brewster. I totally forgot about Punky Brewster, but lo and behold, man, so many people mentioned that on this thread, along with Home Improvement. Here's a couple that I completely forgot about. Step by Step, and I guess Designing Women. A lot of people pick that as a sitcom, and I really never thought about it as a sitcom, but I guess it just wasn't a show that I watched. Mama's Family was mentioned a good bit. Now, Friends obviously was mentioned quite a bit. But, I thought it would be mentioned as much as Seinfeld, but it wasn't. Like, if there was a competition between Seinfeld and Friends as a Gen X show, Seinfeld blew this one out of the water. I mean, it wasn't even close. Um, My Two Dads. You guys remember that show? I thought that was pretty good. It had the guy that was in that show, BJ and the Bear. He was one of the dads, and then Paul Reiser was the other one. But no, that was a really, really good show. I remember watching that. That was one of my regular shows. Saved by the Bell was mentioned. I knew that was on TBS, Saturday morning show. But yeah, I could see that. We Gen Xers, we grew up on Saved by the Bell. A lot of us did. Roseanne got a huge mention. I think from what I read, people really liked the Roseanne during the whole first run. The reboot, uh, I think people probably would have liked it until they kicked Roseanne off the Roseanne show um, over political correctness. Man, we got to stop this woke bullshit. I think all my Gen Xers agree. Um, Full House, that was mentioned a lot. You know what was mentioned that took me by surprise is another show I completely forgot about. Taxi. I completely forgot about Taxi. It was not a show that I watched because probably a little bit before my time, but it's wildly popular. Too Close for Comfort. That was another show that I completely forgot. I didn't forget Newhart, but a lot of people mentioned Newhart. That wasn't one of my shows, but one that was the Hogan Family, and it didn't get a lot of mentions, but it got enough that it caught my attention. The Hogan Family was a really good show. Perfect Strangers. That's another one I completely forgot. Um, and please don't hate me, but I forgot Wings. I forgot that show Wings, but that was a really really good show. Um, a lot of people brought that up. And Frasier, the spinoff from Cheers. Can't go wrong with that. Did I mention Perfect Strangers? I think I did. Here's one I completely forgot, and I'm probably going to hell for this one, but Family Matters. What a good show that was. I mean, of course, none of us are going to forget Urkel. And if you're a Family Matters fan, how are you going to forget Growing Pains? Yeah. Now here's two that popped up a lot. Okay, Alf. You remember that alien life form? Alf. He ate cats. He was a puppet. It was great. It was a good show. I watched Alf. Three's Company also was one that was mentioned a lot. So do I have a top 10? Out of these, I have a top 10s are kind of subjective list. What I liked. It's not going to be necessarily what everybody else liked or what the top 10 shows were. However, I actually wrote a book about the 80s, and it's called The Ultimate 80s, and I wrote that under my actual name that no one can spell. But if you go look this up, it's on Kindle and your e-readers. But I'm actually going to convert that sucker over to a paperback at some point and just go with my pen name Cyrus. So if you get a chance, go look that up. Actually, somebody brought that up earlier. Oddly enough, I was at a convenience store picking up some suds, and there's a song. This girl's like, "Yeah, I heard Adam Sandler singing it. What is the name of this song?" And I'm leaning in, I'm listening to whatever's on the radio. I'm like, "It's Rock Me Amadeus by Falco." She's like, "Who?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can. He did that song in The Wedding Singer, so I can see how you relate to that." And they're like, "Who's Almond Davis?" I'm like, "It's not Almond Davis. It's Amadeus. One word." Anyway, um, I mentioned that I wrote this book. The reason I know because I read a book on the '80s, and I broke it up into like four sections: fashions and fads, movies, music, world events, just all this stuff. Why the nerds are taking over the world, and I thought it was a really cool book. You could read it and like go play trivia off of stuff you read in that book. So if you ever feel the need, um, go look up the Ultimate '80s. It's like this black and blue cover with like a boombox on it or whatever, and a little Pac-Man outline, but not in the yellow color because you can't break copyright laws. Um, so yeah, go check that out sometime. And on the next episode we do on the Gonzo Chronicles, I actually give you my top 10. But I'm going to post this up on my Facebook page. So why don't you guys, when you listen, jump over to Facebook. If you see this post, go back to like March 11th. And I'm going to leave my top 10. I'm going to ask other people to leave their top 10 too. So, Gen Xers, you got some homework. It's Friday night. Where I'm at, I'm getting a snowstorm tomorrow. So, I'm just here living the dream, baby. I'm just here living the dream. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the freaking Gonzo Chronicles. I appreciate it. I love every one of you. If you're listening, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment and a ranking for me. It helps out. Appreciate it, everybody. I'll see you down the road.